Hi, everyone. This is Lauren Baker with Search Engine Journal. Welcome to today's SEJ webinar, supported by our partners at STAT. Today, we have Tom Capper from STAT, and we're going to be talking about navigating SERP complexity, how to leverage search intent for SEO. Before we get started with housekeeping and letting everyone shuffle in, Tom, how about if you take a moment just to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you very much, Lauren. So, yeah, I'm Tom Capper. I work at Moz and STAT. My job title is Senior Search Scientist, which is a bit of a weird one. But what that means is I work on a lot of the data, the SEO data that is behind our products. So both on making sure it's as good as it can be, improving it over time, new features and innovations, but also research based on that data into SEO trends and how SEO is working and changing over time. And of course, that's what I'm going to be talking about today. Before I get on to that, I do want to just briefly hand back to Lauren to talk through some housekeeping.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tom. So just to let everyone know, first of all, make sure your audio is on. So you should see the click for audio button there. Sometimes we have folks that come on and they're like, oh, I can't hear. So make sure you take care of that. Also, closed captioning is available. If you like closed captioning for this webinar, go ahead and hit the CC button at the top of the screen. After Tom is done presenting, we're going to go through a Q&A session. Actually, we're going to be doing two things. One, we'll be doing Q&A around Tom's presentation today. And two, we'll be doing a breakout session with Stephanie and Chris from STAT to go over basically how everything works on the STAT side that Tom will be reviewing and give you the option for a demo. We also have various different handouts today. You'll see in the handout section. First of all, a white paper on leveraging search intent for SEO. Secondly, Whiteboard Friday on the same subject matter. And then an exclusive bonus month from SEJ and from STAT that you'll see in the handouts, and we'll be sharing via a pop-up or poll later today. And then a link to the Moz API tool, which I'm sure Tom will be referring to. Also, after today's presentation is over, we'll be doing a live Q&A session, like I had alluded to. So as questions come up while Tom's presenting, please go ahead and type them into the Q&A box, which is in your webinar control panel. And of course, we like to get everyone kind of talking, saying where they're coming from. So in the chat, you can easily just say, hey, I'm from this town, I'm from this country, this and that. We get people coming in from all over the world, so it's always nice to know where you're from. And then at the same time, to answer the always lingering question, yes, today's presentation will be recorded. Yes, the slides will be made available. And yes, we'll be sending them out to all registrants and attendees of today's webinar. On that note, handing back things over to you, Tom.
Awesome. Thank you very much. So yeah, just to repeat, at the end of the presentation, if you do nothing, you'll stay in the room by default here with me, and we'll do some Q&A from the sidebar. On the other hand, you will also have a button that will come up as an option to go through into this breakout room with Steph and Chris, and they'll talk through some of the features that I'm going to mention as we pass through today. So spoilers, just before that, at the end of this presentation, I'm going to tell you that I think full funnel organic is increasingly unviable. I think it's very difficult for most sites now to have a full marketing funnel that is completely organic search all the way down, and some degree of diversification is needed. That said, there are still lots of opportunities here. There are still lots of gaps in Google's armor, as it were. There are lots of places where you can still fill out certain parts of your funnel with organic search. So here's what we're going to go through step by step. First, I'm going to tell you a brief history of search intent and what I mean by that. Then I'm going to tell you how we're going to be identifying that today. Then I'm going to tell you what these different intents look like. So this is looking at the SERPs as they are right now. Then we're going to talk about how you can match those with your own site and your own content. And then we're going to talk about how this might change in the next year or two. So first things first, a brief history of search intent. This gentleman that you see on your screen now, he's called Andre Broder. And about 25 years ago, he was working for a company called Alta Vista. Now, Alta Vista was one of the other sort of search engines that was in the running before Google kind of won. Now, Andre was a information retrieval, well, still is an information retrieval expert. And information retrieval is sort of the computer science discipline that spawned search engines. And that's what he was working on then and still now. And as you can see, he works for Google in the present day. Back at this time, and I think this was in 2002, I want to say, while he was at Alta Vista, he wrote this white paper. And actually, I strongly recommend searching out this white paper if you get a research paper, really, if you get a chance. It's an interesting piece of SEO history, and it's quite short and it's quite accessible. But this is an information retrieval paper, and it's basically posing a radical and sort of frightening new reality. Andre had noticed that a lot of the searches that people were making in Alta Vista were actually not informational searches. So keep in mind, like I said, people thought search engines were all about information retrieval, and yet a lot of these searches were not informational. And he identified these two other types of search that people were making, navigational and transactional. Now, interestingly, we kind of still use these terms today. It's outstanding. 20-something years ago, from a non-marketer, we get these terms and we're still using them in SEO today. He also, in his excitement, he talked about these, he talked about this future that he foresaw with third generation search engines. And he said how you might see, for example, if you search for San Francisco, a hotel reservation page, a map server, a weather server. It sounds quite familiar, right? Interestingly, if you do search for San Francisco today, you ironically, you see quite an informational search. It's not quite what Andre foretold, but we do see those kinds of results for a lot of queries. So I think we can let him off on that one. What we can't overlook quite so easily is he didn't make any references to this obvious parallel. Like I say, Andre was not a marketer, and he makes no references to marketing funnels in his research paper, and it doesn't seem to occur to him that the intents he's identified do map onto marketing funnels. Of course, in the time that's passed since, many people, many SEOs, many marketers have noticed those parallels, and they have become sort of a well-established way of thinking about the funnel in SEO, that these intents do sort of map onto funnel stages. Interestingly, like I mentioned before, Andre also, since 2012, has worked at Google. Back in 2012, Google introduced these, the no, go, do, and buy intents. And these basically map on to the same intents that most SEOs talk about of informational, commercial, transactional, and navigational. These are basically the same ideas, plus or minus a little bit. And since Google introduced its quality rater guidelines in 2012, these intents have been directly referenced with some of those translations in their quality rater guidelines. Here at Stat, we've also been thinking about this for a long time. So this is from 2016. We weren't the only ones. Lots of SEOs for a long time have sort of understood that when we say informational intent, we're kind of talking about the top of the funnel. When we say commercial and transactional, we're working our way down, and so on and so forth. So that's a brief introduction to intent in SEO. But how can we actually identify intent in searches today? So this is the model that we use at Moz and Stat, and it's a two phase. There's two systems running alongside each other, and then their results combined at the end. So we have a machine learning classifier that looks at the query and the results in the search to try and see what Google is interpreting as being the intent of the search. And then we also have some rules that we've produced ourselves based on our experience, based on sort of certain search features and this kind of thing. And then those are combined at the end to assess the most likely dominant intent out of the four I mentioned before: informational, commercial, transactional, and navigational. And we do, as much as possible, we try to pick one dominant intent, because we think that's more useful than saying, oh, every search is mixed to some small degree. What's interesting is the same keyword, depending on context, can have quite different intents. So when I say a keyword going into this model or going into my data, I often have to think about that as a keyword from a location, from a certain device, probably the same way that you do with your own, or you should do with your own rank tracking. So for example, if we look at the same keyword in the same location, but on desktop versus mobile, in 23% of cases, we're actually seeing a different intent from the same keyword in the same place just by changing the device type. Similarly, if we look at the same keyword on the same device, but we look in the US versus the UK, in 34% of cases, so more than a third of cases, we actually see a different intent just by looking in a different market, even though, ostensibly we're speaking the same language. I also mentioned that as much as possible, we try to look for a single dominant intent. The reality is that a lot of queries, this is quite hard. This is an example. This is a search for ramen, and you can see there's an informational result right at the top with Wikipedia, and you've got the knowledge graph on the side. But then immediately beneath that, you've got the map, which is basically answering the question, I want to immediately go and buy ramen right away. I want to walk out of my front door and buy some ramen. And that's obviously very transactional. So even Google here is acknowledging that there's a sort of mix. We in some cases are not able to pick one dominant intent. So in the data that I'm sharing today, based on the corpus that we looked at, in about 3% of cases, we said, you know what, it's a toss-up. This is kind of a 50-50. So we're just going to say that there's two dominant intents here. In every other case, we tried to assign one intent. If we look at those mixed, that 3% where it was impossible to tell apart and there were two intents really, the most common variants include transactional. There's a lot of cases where you will have a keyword which is something else and a bit of transactional. Google can't quite pick between the two. That's the most common type of mixed intent by far. We saw the Google leak come out in May, and one of the concepts that a lot of people have drawn out of that, and that I've talked about, and I've heard people like John Muller talk about in the past as well, is this idea of on certain searches, you might see certain intents have locked out search positions. So for example, maybe for a certain query, maybe that ramen query we just looked at, position 1 perhaps was always going to be informational. And no matter how much you improved your rankings as the transactional site in position 4 or 5, you were never going to get past that specific informational spot. So this means that on mixed intent SERPs, it can be deceptively difficult to climb in ranking, because you might be the top ranking commercial site on that SERP. You're still in position 6. There's just no way for you to get higher because Google has decided that the top half of that SERP is for informational, or whatever it might be, some variance. So you can see that this second screenshot is from Mike King's write-up, his excellent write-up of the Google leak. And he uses the example of, an author may decide to include only 3 blog posts in a given SERP. So without further ado, what do these intents actually look like in search today? So I'm going to work my way down the funnel and show you some of the patterns that we see and some of the features that are common, and perhaps the areas where you can find some opportunity. So just to give you a brief outline of what we've done here methodology-wise. I took 10,000 queries, which are basically, it's the top 500 queries from 20 different sectors on Google Keyword Planner. So I've tried to produce sort of as unbiased a sample as I can here. And they've been tracked on smartphone and desktop in Portland, Oregon, and Brighton, England, for a total of 40,000 different SERPs. So that's the model we're looking today. And as I mentioned, I've put all of that through the Moz search intent model, which is also shared by Stan. So up first, top of the funnel, that informational intent. So if we're looking at traditional marketing funnel, this is the awareness phase. This is an example of an informational search. So I've searched English Premier League table, and I've got an example of the table. I've searched US dollars to Indian rupee. Now, these are, I'm just trying to answer a question. I'm not really trying to go and buy something or anything like that. Pneumonia, medical term, quite a lot of informational searches in the medical space. Now, what you might have noticed about a lot of these, well, all three of these examples I've just shown you, is they're sort of a dominant above the fold feature. And in this case, it's this featured snippet. Featured snippets are very closely related to informational intent. By our reckoning, feature snippets are about 4 times more common on informational searches as they are on other kinds of search. So just to explain, I've got a few charts that look a little bit like this one. So just to explain what I'm doing here. So basically, there's 0.16 featured snippets per in looking only at the top 20 results, but there always would be in the top 20, right? Per informational SERP. So that means in this case that about 16% of the time for informational queries, we see a feature snippet at the top versus 4% the rest of the time. So that's the kind of comparison I'm going to be making on these charts. So you can see that feature snippets are significantly more common for informational queries than they are for other types of query. Knowledge graph, it's a kind of a similar story. Not as big a difference, but 38%, 0.38 knowledge graphs per top 20 per query is a lot. That's a lot of, it's a very high prevalence. People also ask, we also see quite a lot on these kinds of query. Interestingly, people also ask, a year or two ago, people also ask, was a ubiquitous result type. Basically, every single SERP had a people also ask box. That's gone down in general now, but informational searches are still pretty high. It's about 85% of the time on an informational search, you'll see people also ask. What's worse from an SEO point of view is often these will combine together. So often you'll have knowledge graph and then people also ask, or you'll have a feature snippet and then people also ask. And in both of these cases, the other result types, including organic, are basically completely invisible, right? Of course, we've got AI overviews coming as well. In a lot of markets, these are already here and very common. I'm in the UK and I see these all the time now, particularly on mobile. But in the data that we have at Stat, we see that these are overwhelmingly on informational searches right now. So that may change over time. And Google did play around when these were in their early testing phase. They did play around with versions with products in them and this kind of thing. But for now, AI overviews are strictly an informational feature. What this all comes together to mean, though, is that there's not a lot of share of voice for organic in informational searches. So if we look, this is looking at the share of voice for organic in the 4 different intents, and you can see that for transactional and informational, we in both cases have a very poor showing, which again makes it quite unattractive. You're looking at top of funnel queries, low chance to convert in this sort of awareness phase, and organic is barely getting a look in. It's not that attractive, right? So maybe as SEOs, we work our way a little bit further down the funnel and we take a look at commercial. So if we're looking at traditional marketing funnel, this would be the consideration phase. This is what a typical commercial SERP might look like. You can see in this case, there's an awful lot of sponsored results and also products on the page. But we can also get versions like this. Again, this is a sort of consideration, right? Like this is dinner ideas. This isn't, I immediately want to go to a restaurant, but I'm looking for the kind of restaurants that might exist in my area. There will be, Jackie just asked, will there be a replay of this? Yeah, there'll be a recording shared, so you can watch at will there. This is another example. So this is houseplants. So again, we've got a bunch of sort of consideration focused articles, and organic is getting a pretty good look in on this example here. One feature that's really overrepresented on commercial SERPs is price rich results. So this is this sort of some structured data normally, sometimes some product fees, and it's this price just written in gray text underneath the meta description. We see these hugely commonly on commercial searches. So an average of more than 4 per SERP in the top 20. And that's actually particularly true at the moment in the UK. And in the UK, we see an overwhelming prevalence. Incidentally, the national split on this particular rich result is quite volatile. Like, it is quite common to see a given country shoot up or down quite a bit in how much Google is choosing to show these rich results. So I assume it's something that they're experimenting with. Ratings is another example, works in a very similar way. And we see something very similar. Nearly 5 rating rich snippets in the top 20 on a typical commercial SERP. What's interesting to note is that both of these are the kinds of rich result of snippet that I would expect for product or review pages. Like, if you think about the types of page that would be ranking with these features, they are going to be product pages and review pages. So that tells you something about the kind of site and the kind of page that's ranking here. In terms of standalone features, we see popular products quite a lot. That makes sense. I might have guessed these were more of a transactional, like closer to the bottom of the funnel, but I can also see that you could use, having all the photos and the prices here is quite useful in the sort of consideration phase. And again, these are by far more popular than average on commercial SERPs. Images, very similar idea. We see them a bit more on commercial SERPs than elsewhere. Discussion in forums, this is famously full of Reddit, and yep, this is about twice as common on commercial SERPs as in general. So this is quite a diverse range of features that I've just shown you, right? In organic, what we see is some pretty big domains overperform. This is a pretty tough competition. The domains that overperform in commercial, in the consideration phase, are Reddit, Amazon, YouTube, and we see Best Buy just sneaking in. These are all pretty formidable competition to try and rank up against. And we see that play through in the average domain authority. The average domain authority in commercial SERPs is higher than any other type of intent. And keep in mind that domain authority is what we call a logarithmic metric. So the difference between 75 and 82 is not like 10% or something. It's it's a significant jump for each extra point in DA. It's a very similar story with brand authority. So when we looked at informational searches, we found that organic wasn't getting too much of a look in. When we looked at commercial searches, we found that organic was sometimes getting a look in, but the competition was really tough. So maybe as SEOs, as marketers, we say, right, we're going to go even further down the funnel. Perhaps this is where organic can serve us. The conversion phase. So when we say transactional intent, we mean searchers who are ready to purchase. They've stopped considering that they want to buy. So fruit basket is an example where people have decided they want to buy a fruit basket. They're no longer trying to research fruit baskets. They want to purchase someone. They want to purchase one. Yeah. Used cars. So I always thought I was a bit odd in being the kind of guy that just decides one day that they're going to buy a used car and then goes out and does it. But apparently that is often what people are trying to do when they search used cars. Food near me. Again, this isn't dinner ideas near me, which we saw earlier further up the funnel. This is food near me. This is, I'm hungry, I want to eat. What you'll notice about all 3 of those examples, which we flagged as transactional, is that they could also be described as local. They all had something of a local angle, or I needed proximity for it to work. And that's a common theme at the bottom of the funnel. In a lot of markets and a lot of industries, you're still going to do something in person when you actually come to make that purchase. Not every industry is e-commerce or lead gen where you can actually complete at the bottom of the funnel online. In a lot of cases, whether it's a tradesman, a restaurant, you want to buy something in person, a used car, you can get used cars delivered from across the country, but you're probably not going to. You're going to want to go and see it. So there is some local aspect. As such, we see local packs are a really common feature on transactional searches at the bottom of the funnel, much more so than in other intents. We also see in Europe and in the UK, we see this feature, and you might be seeing these in the US in the near future as well. This is find results on. So this is basically the EU has ruled that local packs are anti-competitive because that's showing Google's maps and local search product, but not anyone else's maps and local search product within Google search, within web search. So they're saying you have to show some other similar services. So this is basically an anti-monopoly piece, and this is normally included above a local pack. So therefore, again, we see this disproportionately on transactional searches. But like I say, right now, we don't see this at all in the US, but I think that may change in time. However, these are the only two features, the only two search features which are overrepresented on transactional searches. So you might be thinking, well, what's happening with the rest of the space? Like, what else is on transactional searches? And the answer is ads. Unsurprisingly, right at the bottom of the funnel, we see a huge quantity of ads. So again, that's not very satisfying as an organic marketer. Now, there are some opportunities in those three intents that I've just talked to you about, and I've shown you kind of the problems with them from an organic point of view. There are still opportunities, and I will talk you through what those opportunities are in a moment. But before we get there, just for completeness, I want to talk about navigational. So navigational is basically, there is a specific web page or website that I already know about that I want to go to. So maybe I've purchased from them before, maybe I'm a loyal customer, maybe I'm recommending them, whatever it might be. We're almost past the bottom of the funnel. In a lot of cases, this means branded. Not necessarily, but in a lot of cases, this means branded. So for example, this is an Olive Garden menu. This is Amazon gift card. It's pretty obvious what site, even what page I want to go to here, that not many people are going to be clicking, scrolling down to find other sites. Department of Homeland Security. These expanded site links that you see here, these tend to appear when Google is really confident that the first result is the one that they want to show. So this is a bit of a giveaway for branded searches. And you can see it in navigational SERPs, about 2.5 times as common to see, slightly more than that, to see full site links as it is on a typical search. Twitter boxes, or X boxes you might call them now, similar idea. And again, this is the kind of thing you would see on a good branded search, right? If I instead had given a presentation today on how to dominate your branded search, probably one of the tips I would have given you is to make sure you control your Twitter profile with the same name as your brand, right? App download, unsurprisingly, this is mainly on smartphone. News, this is an interesting one, but again, Google is trying to show news about the brand that you search, and again, this is something that you can try to control. Disproportionately likely on navigational searches. So all of these are examples, as I say, that you would try to own for your own brand, and that kind of gives away what navigational searches typically are. Same thing if we look at common domains. You see YouTube, Wikipedia, Instagram, Facebook. So these are all going to be the profiles of the brand that you've searched most likely. So what are the opportunities here? What can we actually do as marketers, given the sort of array of problems through the funnel that I've laid out? So like I said, informational is full of features above the fold. Commercial had sort of tough and well-optimized organic opposition. Transactional is full of ads unless you're a brick and mortar business, which you might be. So full funnel is very hard, and you probably knew that already. But what can you do? So the most obvious thing is use other channels to fill in the gap. And that might be a strange thing to hear coming from me, an SEO who works for an SEO company, but that's the reality of it. Your marketing has to be sort of balanced and rounded these days. But there are still opportunities for SEO, like I said. So top of funnel organic is still viable in some verticals. So I said feature snippets were something that often crowds out organic, but feature snippets are something you can appear in, right? There, you can look for in your keyword research cases where there are feature snippets owned by your competitors or by sites that you think you might have a chance of beating out. Yeah. Or you can filter down to find informational keywords that that don't have feature snippets. There are still some examples. They're relatively rare, but they do exist. So this is about adding another layer to your keyword research. Rather than just looking for, oh, I want keywords which are relevant and which have volume, or maybe looking at keyword difficulty as well, you're also looking for the features that exist and who controls them, which is the kind of data that you'll find in good rank tracking platforms. Of course, not every commercial search. I said the problem here was that there were the organic competition was really tough as we moved down the funnel, but this isn't always the case. Again, depending on your sector, this is something that you can look at yourself, right? You can find in some sectors, I've got arts, hobbies, and real estate. Commercial is not actually quite so hotly contested in terms of the strength of opposition. There's also some giveaways for your keyword research that you're looking at commercial keywords. If you see one of these words in the keyword, if you see best, compare, top, or reviews in the keyword, that's a bit of a giveaway that you're probably looking at a commercial keyword. For transactional, I said the problem that it was either local or ads, and many people might want to play in neither of those. However, there is a big opportunity for long tail keywords here. The domain authority of a typical site in transactional searches is actually lower than for other intents. So what that does is it gives you the opportunity to compete in organic alongside those map packs potentially. And although that's going to mean you're looking at ranking with organic content for local keywords, so you're potentially quite low volume, there is going to be a high conversion rate this far down the funnel, so it could be worthwhile. Again, some giveaways in terms of your keyword research. Again, local related terms are a bit of a giveaway that this is going to be a high conversion intent. Dallas, Chicago were both places that were in my research or in my test corpus, and near me as well. So if you're interested in doing some of these sort of keyword research modifications that I've just laid out, we do have an offer, which I think should be popping up on your screen. I can't see it on mine, but I'll trust it's popping up on your screen. So this is to get a free month of stat. So you'll have the opportunity to do some of these operations that I've just represented on us, basically. So the last thing I want to talk about in the meantime is where I think this is going to go in the next month or two, and then we can do some next year or two. I don't think we'll move that quickly, and then we can do some Q&A. So for informational, I think the trend that we're seeing over time is that there's a sort of ever-rising bar of Google is just going to answer this question for you. It's been the case for a long time. Feature snippet's been out for over a decade. It's been true for a long time that if you ask a really basic question, in this case, like how old is Vin Diesel, Google is going to just answer that in the SERP. You're not really going to get a click these days for that term. Of course, that started to creep up. Google started presenting weather results. They started doing currency conversions, metric conversions. So again, the bar sort of raised again and again for what was novel enough and deep enough information for you to actually be getting a click on an informational search. And of course, now this is going even further with things like AI overviews. So you need to think about, if you're writing informational content, is this something that Google can answer in the SERP? If so, or are people going to want to read this from me, from an expert? Are they going to not trust the AI results or whatever it might be? So this is sort of how you have to think about informational search going forwards. Commercial, in some ways, I think commercial is the sweet spot for organic in terms of you have opportunities for organic to rank. It's not totally blown out by above the fold search features, but at the same time, it's super volatile, right? You're very vulnerable to a lot of these sort of product focused algorithm updates, which cause sites to come and go from one quarter to the next, basically. So One thing you can think about in this space is a lot of these features that you can appear in for free, which might give you some degree of insurance. I've recently published some research over on the Moz blog, which talks about how you might insure against some of this commercial volatility. But you can see that this is what Panda came out at the start of this chart in 2014. That's Panda 4. We used to think, I remember being in the office when Panda updates would drop, and I worked at an SEO agency at the time, and it would be all hands on deck, panicked clients ringing the office. That's just a normal day now. That level of SERP volatility is just a normal day, and it has been for some time. In transactional, I think we have to be looking at whether Google can take even more out of these kinds of searches. So we already see ads showing up a lot, and we already see local packs, like I shared before. But at least most businesses can compete in ads, and a lot of businesses compete in local packs. Yeah. But these kinds of Google just cutting out the middleman. I've seen some evidence that they might be exploring this in food delivery as well. Flights is a feature that, this kind of thing I would expect to see more of over time. It is arguably anti-competitive, but it's not like that's ever stopped them before. When we can also say that although AI overviews right now are exclusively informational, basically, they have played around with commercial and transactional AI overviews during the beta phase. So it wouldn't be a huge shock if they came back around to this idea. So to conveniently answer Ryan's question in the chat, 4 quick hacks for you to take away and take back to the office for your keyword research. For informational, we're looking for informational plus organic is in position 1. We're looking for commercial plus it's a low difficulty keyword. We're looking for commercial plus winnable search features. And we're looking for transactional plus local long tail. This data is in Moz Pro right now. It's also coming very soon to both. It's also in the Moz API right now. It's coming soon to the new UI stat. So if you do get that month free, or if you do get a demo from us, you might be seeing that very soon. And there's also even more detail on everything I shared today. Obviously, I've had to go reasonably quickly. There's even more detail on all of this in that handout in the tab. So right now you have a choice. Either you can stay here with me and we're going to do some Q&A. If you do nothing, you'll end up staying here with me. Or alternatively, you can click the button that hopefully has just popped up for you, and you can go through into the breakout room where you'll get in the next 20 minutes a bit of a demo from Stephanie and Chris on some of these features. So up to you which one you want to go for.
Thank you so much, Tom. And for those of you that have stuck around, we're going to jump in the Q&A right now. It's really interesting to look at the different types of feature snippets and everything for all of the different intent and everything else. One question that came up though, and you went over AI overviews a little bit, is do you think AI overviews will always be mostly for informational intent, or will we see more of like the example that you showed from local show up from the transactional perspective?
That's a great question, and I'm personally not a fan of AI overviews at all, and I don't mean just from an SEO point of view. I think they're just a bad idea by Google, and they've sort of been pressured into it. However, so the reason I think it's a bad idea is because they're more expensive for Google to generate, and they're less likely to generate ad clicks for Google, and they don't encourage a sort of ecosystem of clicks, which Google is built on. Now, I think they will stay mostly informational. And the reason I think they'll stay mostly informational is because that's the area where they're least damaging to Google. So this is sort of, put them in informational queries, similar to feature snippets. It keeps people using Google for this kind of query, keeps you in the Google ecosystem, but you're not cannibalizing what could have been an ad click because no one's really bidding on informational keywords anyway. I think if you're Google and you want to put AI overviews into some of those further down the funnel intents, you've got some big risks. Like you need to not just cannibalizing your own business in terms of the ad clicks, but also annoying your advertisers who might not like how their ads are being represented and this kind of thing.
Yes.
Now, I'm not saying they'll never do it. I think they'd be stupid too, but I think they were stupid to do all of this in the first place. So maybe they'll do it. But yeah, I think they will probably stay maybe not exclusive informational, but informational heavy.
If it's informational heavy, do you think they're going to end up replacing feature snippets and site links?
I do, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, maybe not site links, but feature snippets, yes. I do think those two features will merge in time. I've just seen in the chat someone said yesterday Google announced beta AI Overview ads. Yeah, that's true, and I've seen them testing AI Overview local packs and testing AI Overview product features. You know, we saw that during SGE phase as well. So it is definitely something they're interested in. I just don't think it's something they're going to go super heavy on, but I could be wrong. I am speculating here.
You had mentioned pursuing low-hanging fruit for transactional keywords, right? Where there's still a lot of opportunity. Can you explain more about how I can do that, or how our viewers can take advantage of those low-hanging fruit?
Yeah. So where I see that basically is there's a lot of these sort of what you might call long tail, like relatively specific sort of local queries where the competition is not super strong, but the purchase intent is high, and you're not competing with too much apart from perhaps a local pack in terms of features. So, you know, for example, if I search for dinner ideas near me, there'll be a local pack, but there are probably also going to be organic pages which are specific to my area. Like even though I searched near me, Google will interpret and it will give me pages that are specific to, you know, my area or my part of the country or whatever. So those organic pages probably are not facing very stiff competition, and they probably are quite high intent. So at some of these, you know, location plus transactional term queries, yeah, do your own research, but these can be quite rich pickings.
Got you. And you know, speaking of local results and near me results, if someone is putting together a page for some, say, like sushi restaurants in Dallas, Texas, for example, would you recommend that they optimize for all four intents of the topic target? Should they be giving information about sushi, information about the area, information about their menu, everything else, the call to action to reserve a table, the call to action to order, whatever it may be? How can someone optimize a page to make sure they're covering all the bases?
So I think that there's kind of two things there. I think it's probably worth splitting out when you've got your keywords which are related to sushi in Dallas, and you've done your research and you've got your list of keywords. It's probably worth figuring out how those keywords break into intents. You're probably going to have a mixture of intents amongst that keyword research, and maybe have multiple pages. So you might have a page which is, I'm looking to order sushi to be delivered in Dallas, Texas right now. You might have a page that's, you know, I want to understand the history of so-and-so sushi quarter in Dallas. I've never been to Dallas, Texas, as you can guess. Yeah, there's going to be a mixture of different intents in there, and it might be worth having different pages if they're very divergent. That said, even on the like transactional page, you might still want to have some supporting information, whether it be in order to have a bit of copy on the page or a bit of color on the page to reassure people, whatever it might be. You know, a good transactional landing page can still have some informational content.
Outstanding. And just as a reminder, we are offering, along with Stat, a bonus month. So if you're interested and would also like us to contact you about a personalized walkthrough of Stat, please go ahead and let us know. We're launching the little poll right now. So if you're interested, please hit yes. And for some reason, if not, please go ahead and hit no. But we have that launched right now. So go ahead and fill that in if you have a chance. And I'll just close that in a second and get on to the next question. All right, we've got some results coming in. I'm going to go ahead and close the poll right now. Boop. And on to the next question. Let's see here. May ask a very interesting question. For a service-based company as opposed to an e-com company, How can we leverage price search in SERPs if we are not a product-based company, but service-based and rates are customized?
How can you leverage price? So I think this is a very specific question. If I'm going off the top of my head, I could be wrong. I think you can use that schema to reference a price range. From memory, that is a thing you can do, but please do check because I could be wrong. It's a while since I looked at that.
Great. So make sure your price range is marked up in schema. Even if it is customized, there is a range. So take it from there and then monitor the results accordingly. Is there a way to outrank a competitor that's currently ranking for a featured snippet? Say the competitor's been there for a while. Is there a way to outrank and or any best practices, so to speak, to be featured above?
I mean, for sure, feature snippets are not awarded permanently, right? It is, and it's basically the same as the rank 1 result now, right? Like the URL that's appearing in the feature snippet won't appear in organic beneath these days. But yeah, what I would be doing, and it's kind of similar to any other, you're trying to displace a position 1 ranking. Look at what they're doing, how they're structuring it, but particularly look at the bit that's being pulled out by the feature snippet. What question is that answering? How is it sort of laid out? If they've got like a subheading and then the thing, for example. So yeah, you want to obviously not trying to copy exactly what they're doing. But you're looking to get inspiration from what they're doing and what Google is sort of valuing there, and do what they're doing, but a bit better.
For a SaaS company, if they're currently getting, say, their normal rankings, but want to expand upon that, say, for example, for a branded term, do you have any recommendations on profiles they can set up, things along those lines to have better representation within the Google results, and or any third-party data which could be shown in rich snippets under their queries?
There's 2 quite different things there. So I think one of them was about dominating their own branded SERP.
Yes.
So sort of like some degree of parasite SEO. So it's all the social networks basically, but also you can look at review sites, things like Trustpilot. You can look at things like YouTube. The other question was, I forgot now. Can you remind me what the other half of the question was?
The other question was how to integrate that third-party data into their site to possibly show up in the rich results themselves.
I think third-party data to show up in rich results is quite a challenging one, but I'm guessing this is about Trustpilot. My assumption is that this question is about Trustpilot.
Yes.
So I think this all varies site by site. But I think Trustpilot themselves have a widget that will basically put this structured data and their own thing on the page, and it calls from their own API. You want to be a bit careful. It definitely is possible to get structured data penalties if you're using the same rating data for your entire site. Google wants to see you using rating data that is specific to that page. So if this page is about this product, maybe even this product at this location, then the review data you're showing should be specific to that. They don't want to see your brand-wide Trustpilot score on every page on the site. They're not going to show that. In fact, they'll probably give you a structured data penalty. So you want to make sure you get that nuance. If you don't want to use the Trustpilot widget, which is totally understandable, it looks kind of bad, I think they do also have an API that you can draw from to get that information.
We did have a question come in about, it was fairly basic, but it was, how to compete for the high volume transactional terms that they feel is a little bit difficult. But do you have any tips on going beyond the high value key term? So for example, if someone is looking to rank for car vacuums, right? And then they do a search, and car vacuums is all Google product search, sponsored listings, things like that. Would you suggest that they go long tail? Say car vacuums for this brand or something along those lines, or question and answer? Is the FAQ section a good area for that? Any recommendations on that?
Some of that is what we were talking about before, where plus take your keywords and plus locations. If you're doing car vacuums, presumably there are places you have depots, places you deliver to, this kind of thing. That there are some. You don't want to be spinning up thin landing pages for every town in the country. This does need to be places where there is something you can say about the location and what your offering is in that location. But if you can do that, that's a great way to sort of get more specific and be showing up in people's area. The other thing you can do is move a bit further up the funnel. If you really can't compete at the bottom for car vacuums or whatever it might be, you can, and like I say, for a lot of brands, there'll be parts of the funnel that they cannot do in organic these days, and they need to use other channels. But that doesn't mean that there isn't somewhere in the funnel where you could still leverage organic. Maybe people have questions about how to use their car vacuum, how to maintain their car vacuum, whatever it might be.
Going back to the Dallas example, Dallas, Texas, that's a city that has numerous, say, suburbs that have become part of the city, things like that, right? And I've worked with clients in the past where they may have an office that is not necessarily within a Dallas address, but it's within one of the surrounding cities that's considered the Dallas metroplex. Yeah. If someone, if a client or a company does not necessarily have an address that's listed in that city, but does provide services for that city, is it still feasible to be able to rank for that city name?
Yeah, absolutely. And I've seen examples of this before. I've worked on examples of this before. Like I say, you don't want to have just like a copy of your normal landing page, but find and replace the place name or something like that, or have nothing on there. Like that's like obviously a bit crap for everyone, including you and including Google, including the customer. But if you can say something like, we do service this area. This is the availability we have in this area. This is how long it will take us to reach you in this area. Our neighboring depot in so-and-so will be able to serve you here. This kind of thing. If there is information you can give specifically to reassure customers in that area that they are going to get a good service from you and what the limitations are there, then yeah, totally. I think that's useful.
Going back to people also ask, right? Which is fairly all over the place. And I think you had shown that the visibility has declined.
Yeah. And in the last, and I think it's about a year ago now that I might be wrong, maybe slightly longer than that, it took a big dive. So it used to be like basically every query that people also ask. And now it's about 2/3, which is still a lot, but a lot of those 2/3 are informational. So it's become informational leaning as a feature, basically.
Do you see people also ask as being a traffic driver?
I actually don't. I know you can appear like in there, it's a legitimate tactic to try and appear in people also ask, or in the kind of searches that it sends people through to. But I see the value of people also ask to SEOs as being more of a keyword research benefit. And it's something that we include in the keyword suggestions data in both stat and moz. But I think you can learn something about what Google thinks the follow-up queries might be. But I don't think that, I'm sure there's some clicks to be had there, but I don't think it's a big opportunity.
Excellent. Speaking of Moz, our next SEJ webinar is going to be with Dr. Pete Myers from Moz, and we're going to be talking about brands rule Google why building a brand is key to SEO. Before we hop off, just to let everyone know, we're going to keep the webinar open for those of you that are currently in the breakout room. And Tom, is there anything that you'd like to add? Any statements or answers to anything that you saw within the chat that you'd like to add to today's discussion to end the Q&A?
There is one thing I'd like to add, which is you should definitely come to that webinar next week. I work very closely with Dr. Pete. He's great. I've seen his presentation. It's also great. And he'll be talking a little bit about that volatility aspect in commercial SERPs as part of his presentation as well. So if you enjoyed this, or even if you didn't enjoy this, you should definitely come and listen to him because he's way better.
Excellent. I don't know if he's way better per se, but it's always good listening to Dr. Pete and everything else. So really looking forward to that next week. Tom, it's really been a pleasure. Like I said, we're going to leave the webinar open for those of you that are in the breakout room. And don't forget to take advantage of the bonus month of Stat. brought to you by Stat and Search Engine Journal. For those of you that are interested, there is a direct link within the handout section, along with the Stat white paper on leveraging search intent for SEO, and the Whiteboard Friday from Moz as well. So please take advantage of everything within the handout area. Tom, is there anything else you'd like to touch upon before we go?
No, thanks for coming, everyone, and thanks for having me, Lauren.
Thank you. Really, it's been a pleasure.
Cool.